Welcome back, Screamers, to another episode where we consider our places in a world in which we did not ask to be born. That's right. At the time of recording, it's July 27th, we are fully enmeshed in the Barbenheimer or Barbie universe.
That'd be a good place for a Wilhelm scream to be thrown in there.
just like falling.
You know what? Before we jump into it, I think funny's not the right word, but I know that we too are just voices in the void. So it's not like I think that I do. So let's not play games.
Right.
But I think that we're the preeminent movie voices of our generation.
This is true.
I mean, like it goes without saying. I just said it, but it should go without saying.
I'm gonna say it again.
I hear all of this like, oh, studios should pay attention and like to what? Like this idea of like we're going to release two different studios are going to release movies that are going to capture an amount like that. They're like Universal and Warner's at some point in the future are going to work on a summer release of Fast 11 and Mission Impossible, Dead Red, and then release those on the same weekend. This is such a weird like confluence of events where two studios weren't going to back down, most likely because Oppenheimer was already in the IMAX settings anyway. So you had to lock those in. And then Universal just saying, look, Barbie is a decent counter program to Oppenheimer. And you can't like recapture a cultural phenomenon that allows these two to like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to see? And again, you're talking about Nolan and an up-and-comer. Gerwig's established, right? But, I mean, but she's still, like, she's not that well known amongst the...
This is her third film.
Right.
It's not her 11th, like Nolan's.
Right. Yeah. And it's a big, huge IP, right? That's been bandied about for a really long time. I mean, like, this is something that Mattel's been trying to get off the ground forever. They threw it over to Amy Schumer, and she bolted after a while because she wasn't able to get it done in the way that she wanted to get it done. And then basically they were, to Mattel's credit, they allowed Gerwig and Baumbach to do, that put their stamp on it to a certain extent. But
to a certain extent.
Well,
I think,
we'll get into that for sure. I do think that this idea of like this is a repeatable thing, like I just don't see it anymore. I don't see it. This is a thing that happened. We should all just take a little bit of whatever joy you want to take into like the poster mashups and the T-shirts and things like that, and let's just take it and you remember that summer. But I mean, like this is never. I won't say never, but this is not something that you can manufacture. And there's no studio ever that's going to do it to two of their own properties. So like the idea that Universal and Warner, they didn't team up. They just didn't flinch, and they just set in their dates and didn't move.
Yeah, it was release date chicken.
Right. And so this idea that we're going to see this or like we're going to see this in the future, I think is a ludicrous prospect.
Do you think it's just people trying to reinvigorate, recapture this kind of cinema theater experience because we have seemed to have lost that theater going thing, and people lament it so much as they sit and watch things on their couch?
I think if they lamented it, that they would go.
But
and I think I think this was.
But is their counter like, well, if they did this, I would go. And I mean, look, I'm being
right.
Like,
but I mean, you can only like Barbie 2 won't do this kind of this. It won't be this movie.
Just tell me it won't be.
It's gonna be, but it won't be Gerwig. It'll be something else, right? But this gave people the things that studios should pay attention to, right? A female-centric, driven IP, and that for whatever reason, I guess it's been derided a little bit online, and we'll probably not love it 100% as much as it's being loved right now. But I mean, not for non-artistic reasons. We're not going to sit there and say this is not some Proud Boys event. Like we're going to tear into it.
Right.
I don't. So this gave. So that's what they should be paying attention to, right? I mean, like this idea of, female voices and a prominent or up and coming prominent, soon to be prominent female director. I do think though that the problem that we face after this is that Gerwig goes directly to Chronicles of Narnia for Netflix, and like we talked about before, Sarah Polley comes off of Women Talking and goes directly into Bambi, a live action Bambi. And I'm like, I get it. I understand the need for money and the ability that the power that those movies will hopefully, although you can make an argument like the Eternals didn't do anything for, something
Chloe
like,
Zhao,
right.
right?
So there's a danger there. And there's a danger for the Narnia films to like not, I mean, like, I don't know why that is the next step for her. And I don't know what kind of spin, and looking at Barbie, I mean, like if she's going to be painted within a certain, where she's going to be kept in and under wraps, essentially, not under wraps, but, within a certain framework of where she can work. Like she's not going to be able to go out and like make a subversive Chronicles of Narnia, right? I mean, it's like the message is going to be the message, right? She's not even going to. I don't think that she can even escape the Christian trappings, which I don't know if necessarily she wants to.
Right.
But the heavy allegory of Christianity that is over the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I just don't. I don't know. I don't know what. And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, but it's not something I'm excited about seeing, especially not a direct to Netflix film.
No, I so we're also talking about John Cassavetes today, and I don't think we live in an era anymore where these kinds of auteurs will take studio jobs to make money to finance another film, or take acting roles to finance another film. I don't think that's what they're doing here. Right. As much as I would like to say, oh, Sarah Polley's doing this so that she can go make another. Yeah. And that's not what they're doing. And that also sort of begs the question, artists like Polley, like Gerwig, they have established themselves. Right. I mean, they're not sort of, oh, I've done one small mumblecore movie and now, right, I got this big shot and now I've got to do something else to back that up. I mean, Gerwig is good, right? She did Lady Bird and Little Women, and everyone's like, oh, these are amazing. And now she's done a film like Barbie, which, look, if I don't love all of it, I still like the film.
Right.
She doesn't need to do Chronicles of Narnia.
Right. Yeah, and I can't imagine what is her next step from there? Because is Netflix driving a U-Haul full of money up? I can't imagine that being the case. 3 films in, and they gave her those before Barbie. Now, of course, Barbie's been tracking for a while. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm sure they knew it was going to be a hit. But again, you could have placed anybody and made Barbie make $500 million. Maybe not opening weekend, and it may not have. But I don't think like Barbie could have been just like the Lego Movie. Mm-hmm. And been this kind of not subversive, but a irreverent take on the material. And still done, and everyone. I think everyone would have still had the same level of praise. I don't know. But I think you're right. Like looking at somebody like Cassavetes or like the people that are, that kind of invented independent cinema, right? Especially in that, especially in American independent cinema, we tend to grab those people and immediately throw them into major IP work, and then like when it doesn't work out, what's left for them to go back to trying to figure out how to not work with a $300 million budget or what have you?
Right, like is Chloe Zhao going to go back and make another? Now look, I did not love Nomadland, and I know that I'm like one of the handful of people in the world who didn't.
Right.
But she was never going to have a successful Eternals. She was always going to be sort of put in a box of this is how these stories have to be. Now, she put her own sort of visual spin on it, right? In that she did things in camera and not just with green screen.
Right.
And it looked pretty.
Right.
But
the story was already given to her, right?
Right. She was given a box and she kind of wrapped the box in a different type of paper.
Right. And it's something like with like Gareth Edwards and like getting stuck with, Godzilla. Again, and all to varying degrees of success. Like it's to me the best example of where it not working out and probably not working out for the betterment of the director was Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright being, leaving Ant-Man, which obviously, like, I know people can try to defend Peyton Reed and those Ant-Man movies, but they have moments that are funny. And I like Paul Rudd as much as the next guy. But I mean, those movies are just middle of the road Marvel bullshit. for Edgar then goes to go back and do Baby Driver and the same types of films that he's always been wanting to do. So him kind of like realizing that this is not for him and then keeping back and going in and doing the movies that he's always wanted to do and he's been doing for his entire career. Great, good for him. I just like I don't the allure does the allure start to wear off when because you see some of these people being eaten up and churned out and then kind of left to the wayside when now they are branded with you can't if you've given such a surefire home run like the Eternals and you can't make it happen then what what are you
and it's not really your fault. And this I'm going to jump ahead for one brief second sure. because one of the Cassavetes' second film, which to me isn't really a second film, but whatever. A lot of these questions that we're asking, I think, are really raised in that movie, right? With Bobby Darin's character, who is sort of the embodiment of artistic integrity. I don't care if I have to play jazz in a park. I just want to play jazz. I want to play my music. I want to play it my way. I'm not going to do it.
And I'll burn this motherfucker down.
And I will burn this motherfucker down in order to do it. Right. And this is the same thing like we're talking about here. And I mean, you could say that Darin's character is an analog or a stand-in for Cassavetes himself being like, fuck this. Right. Yeah. But it all ties back to like this idea of why are they doing this for this truckload of cash? They're already famous.
Right. Right, and it's not like Netflix. It's not like Netflix is not getting, especially Baumbach, with money to do, the Meyerowitz stories and other independent
and white noise,
right? And lower. I don't know what you want to call it, right? This lower budget, not quite high pressure, but also a slightly elevated prestige, especially for streaming networks.
I mean, it's kind of like if it's sort of like highbrow literature.
But take White Noise and compare it to something like Squid and the Whale. Squid and the Whale gets more probably praise, but I'm guaranteeing that more people saw White Noise just because it showed up on their For You page as they went into Netflix, right? So right. I get why Noah would sign up for a Netflix contract when they don't probably really care about, and they're going to give him carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do in regards to the actual movie making process and the editing and what have you.
It's a marketing scheme more than it is.
Right. As long as you deliver it under budget and on time, you're going to be fine. So Final Cut, no worries. Yeah. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe something spoke to Gerwig and to Pauly in these, but I can't imagine that, that again, Gerwig is going from being handcuffed by Mattel, clearly, and then going directly into a, for lack of a better term, for lack of a better description, a Lord of the Rings type series of, young adult science fiction.
Like you said, with Christian trappings rather than sort of trappings of modernity.
Right. And so now you really can't. Again, giving the benefit of the doubt, but I don't see, this is not going to be some sort of like in your face Chronicles of Narnia, right? And then
question everything.
And then for Pauly, like to go from Women Talking to win the Oscar for Women Talking, and then to go directly into what the fuck are you going to bring? Like, are you going to get a David Lowery type ability to play Pete's Dragon or Peter Pan and Wendy? Are you gonna? How? What's the story that you're going to tell that's going to be different? Because in all honesty, of all of the live action remakes of these movies, nothing has been done that's been out of bounds. And mostly they're just Gus Van Sant Psycho. They're just shot for shot,
right,
dead-eyed, lifeless, versions of and yes, the photorealism of Bambi and the fur and of Thumper are gonna be fucking amazing.
And Flower.
Right, sure. Don't forget Flower, right? Yes.
But again, these directors, so maybe not Lowery, right? But a director like Sarah Polley, she's not necessarily concerned. I don't mean to speak for her, right? But she's not necessarily concerned with kind of new filmmaking technologies necessarily. She's concerned with telling stories and different ways to tell stories. But if you look at Women Talking, the color's desaturated, but it's not like, we built a giant animatronic woman.
Right, this is not
who's
rotoscoped.
right, right. And so there, I mean, I could see if it was like an exercise in craft.
Frances McDormand's in a mocap
She's
suit.
in a mocap suit.
Can you imagine being a director?
And Scar grows to 35 feet and just,
Can you imagine being the director that puts Frances McDormand in a mocap suit? All right, act against this tennis ball. This is a big, huge monster, Francis.
Arg. Arg.
Well, and I know
you're scared, Francis. No.
Partly we sound like we're 20-year-old kids lamenting that our favorite band got on the Twilight soundtrack. But I don't feel like it's the same thing.
We're playing stadiums now.
But I mean, there's part of that. But I don't. I feel like again, I was that person for a brief period. I think we all go through that.
We all have different aspects of kins. And
right. When Buffalo Tom showed up on My So-Called Life, I'm like, damn it. Come on, guys.
It's over. This is over.
I like both of these things, but not together, man.
Not together.
But I don't feel like so as wrong as we were about like Modest Mouse getting an Apple commercial or whatever. Like, because again, does it make them sell out their music, or does it just bring it to a wider audience? I don't think that Bambi is going to bring a wider audience to Women Talking.
No, right. Because Women Talking already had a...
Well, and it's not like we're going to go back and revisit Sarah Polly's... I know, you don't have to kick the table over.
Pissed.
We're not going to go back. Like, kids who are going to watch Bambi live action are not going to go revisit Sarah Polly's filmography.
Catalog, right? Like, wait, this is the woman who did Bambi, this Women Talking movie? Oh my God. I have to sit and watch this right now.
Right.
It's pretty much the same story.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, let's get into these fucking movies.
Would you talk about Barbie?
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. You guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks,
Some things have been happening that might be related.
when my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground. What do I have to do?
You have to go to the real world. You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find.
I'm coming with you.
Okay.
Wow, this is the real world. What's going on? Why are these men looking at me?
Yeah, they're also staring at me.
Barbie in the real world. That's impossible.
If this got out, this could mean extremely weird things for our world. This would be catastrophic!
We haven't played with Barbie since we were like 5 years old. Oh.
No one rests until this doll is back in a box.
Even if nobody else sings along.
Humans only have one ending.
Get that Barbie!
Ideas live forever.
No, I won't let you do just one appendectomy,
But I'm a man.
but not a doctor.
Can I talk to a doctor?
You are talking to a doctor.
And I need a clicky pen?
No.
A sharp thing?
No.
There he is. Doctor!
Somebody get security.
Is Barbie if you still in doubt?
For those of you who haven't seen it, which I guess is just pretty much nobody at this point, and by the time this comes out, no one will have,
Right.
no one will have not seen it.
Right.
Barbie,
And with our attention spans, this will be moot anyway.
right. Barbie, played by Margot Robbie, is in a parallel world to ours, which evidently has a link to the world through Southern California, through Los Angeles, which made me wonder, like, and again, I'm not the right audience for this because then I start pulling apart all of these threads. Like, so there's not like all of the worldwide Barbies go through Southern California, right? There's not. Is there a Barbie Land? Because when they show Barbie Land has all of the. It does know about all of the continents, basically, in all the countries. So like,
This is interesting though, because they never, but it's all like one country.
right. So Barbie Land is its own thing.
So like there is no Barbie Land,
There's no
Southeast
Thailand.
Asia.
Right. Yeah, there's no Thailand Barbie Land, or no
Right.
China Barbie Land, or
Right. There's just one. Everyone's represented in Barbie Land.
And so Barbie starts having an existential crisis. She starts thinking about death. Her body starts to fall apart, I guess, if you want to characterize it as. She gets cellulite and her arches drop.
And they do point that out. I mean,
Right,
and that
right.
was, Helen Mirren does go, oh, we realize Margot Robbie is not.
Right. And so basically what happens is that, all of the Barbies are played with, they have real life or toy counterparts in the real world. And that when they're able to, I guess, have some sort of like emotional connection to the girls that are playing with them, although they don't really know that who's out there. And so one of the Barbies in the real world is being played with, and that person who's playing with them has an existential crisis of their own, and they're having their own personal problems, and that causes the Barbie. And it's happened before. It's happened with Kens. It's happened with, but they don't really, like, this would, another thing that I kind of pulled apart, like, this would seem to happen all of the time. Right. Barbie sets up, and I commend Gerwig for doing, I think, the best that she could possibly do. Well, I say that I think I commend Gerwig with doing as well as she did, given the fact that this is a biopic picture. I mean, you can't tell this story and have Mattel be over it.
Right, because they're financing it, and they're
right, and they're going to allow you to poke fun at Midge and growing up Barbie with the boobs that grow, and like videoed Barbie. They're going to allow you to make fun of their past mistakes, but very, very narrow. And like, they did take the piss a little bit of the woman who, Ruth, who ends up was the inventor of Barbie.
Oh, right.
And it's just like, about how she did some tax evasion stuff. But
And
it's
got
all
kicked
kind
out
of
of the
like
company.
very tongue in cheek, right? And it's also very like wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
It's also a kind of faux self-flagellation, right?
Absolutely.
Look at us, we're kind of bad, and we're trying to be better. And it's like, no, you're really not, though.
Right, right. And so Barbie has to go, and so the thought process is in Barbie Land is that she can either go into the real world and help this person overcome their own crisis, so everything can go back to normal in Barbie Land. And that's what happens, essentially.
That's the inciting event.
And then when she gets there, she meets the girl that she thinks is playing with, that is the owner of her Barbie toys, which turns out she's not. It ends up being her mother. And her mother is a single mom. Oh, no, she's not a single mom. Her mother is just having a crisis of her own. And again, this is where Barbie kind of like falls on this idea of, and it feels like Barbie's patting itself on the back a lot of the time, where, all right, yeah, we get that. This is 2023, right? This is not 1960, where we're trying to convince and I'm not saying that the patriarchy doesn't exist and these problems don't exist, but I'm saying that this idea of women struggling and this idea of like that whole monologue that America has, where she goes off and says, you try to be this and it's never good enough, and like we got to do this. We also
It's a
gotta do
lose-lose
this.
speech, right?
And it's fine, but I do think that I do think it's just a little too on the nose for this idea of like, oh, this is a huge women empowerment. I don't know if that really is true. I think if you start scratching under the surface of this, just laying these out, like there's some really poignant and like touching moments in this movie where when she gets to the real so everything in Barbie Land is perfect, right? I mean, like
and women run everything.
Women run everything. They're all the jobs. Kins are basically superfluous. They go off and
superficial.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so they have no jobs. They don't really do anything, and they don't really know how to interact with the Barbies, which again brings up an entirely different problem that we'll touch on I'll touch on in a minute. So she gets to the real world, and one of the first things she does when her and Ken split apart is that she sits down at this bus stop and looks over, and she sees this old woman. Now Barbies don't age, so she looks over there and like almost with tears in her eyes, and that was the Barbara. That was the actual person. That was the Ruth's daughter who Barbie was named after.
Right.
The actress or the person that was there. And she just looks over at her and she says, "You're beautiful." And the lady comes back and she says, "I know." I mean, it's a really nice kind of moment, especially as you're first getting into the real world and Barbie's kind of realizing it's a nice opening moment. And Robbie is phenomenal.
Oh, she's amazing.
Right? Has
she been nominated for an Oscar once or twice?
I don't know.
All right, well,
at least
she should for this. Well, I don't remember what, like, she was nominated for the Tarantino film, and I can't remember.
Hollywood?
Yeah, wasn't she nominated for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. She wasn't nominated for Babylon.
Right. No,
right. Okay.
Nothing was nominated for Babylon. I mean, not for.
I'm just thinking of sort of her bigger roles and going through that. But anyway, I mean, I'm sure I could find out, but I'm just lazy.
She wouldn't have gotten anything for Wolf of Wall Street. It would have been too.
But she should for this and she has the hardest job in this film.
Right.
I mean, from an acting standpoint, because it's so tough what she has to do. She has to be funny. I mean, very much like America Ferrera's speech, right? She has to do all these things, but not too much.
Right.
You have to be funny and sincere and ironic and sort of self-aware and a little mean, but again, like not too much.
I think Ferrera is really good in this too. I think they give Sasha a little bit of a short shrift, and because once you introduce I don't know Sasha's real name. It was the daughter, right? So, so we get there. We get to the real world. Going back to the plot, we get to the real world, and people are leering at Barbie, and then they start making all this kind of meta commentary about how Barbie, and this is kind of where I think Barbie does it well, right? This idea of like they're aliens in our world, and Barbie's being stared at, and of course they're wearing Dayglow neon spandex.
They're on Venice Beach though too.
True. And they're skating together, and so people are looking at Barbie and people are looking at Ken, and Ken for the first time is like, oh, this feels empowering. I get the exact opposite feeling of Barbie, who like it feels like there's a lot of violence attached to all of this. I think that's where Gerwig is really able to kind of like put a finger on like a lot of what kind of the more progressive things that are out there, because again, you don't really see it. There's not, but I mean, like this idea, this inner like her constantly worried about it's obviously new to her, but like all of this and how it's coming across, and then versus how it's coming across to Kim. So they get arrested for stealing clothes because they don't know how to pay for anything. There's a relatively funny comment about how they don't have genitalia, but I mean that's really never really touched upon actually, and like and that was a pretty funny line actually where she's at the they go to she's being catcalled by essentially construction workers.
Well, because remember, construction crews in Barbie Land are all females.
Women, right.
So she's like, I know a safe space, construction crew. Let me go there.
Right. And she's like, well, regardless of what you want and what you're saying, like none of us have. I don't have a vagina. He doesn't have a penis. Like it's like we have no. It's like. And they're like, nah, I don't care.
All right.
Right, it's not a problem. So Ken goes off and discovers the patriarchy, essentially. And he does it in the worst way possible, like by watching 80s action films and coming across. Like,
and reading books on trucks.
Right, reading books on trucks and horses and things like that.
Right, and he's like watching things like happen around him where all he sees is men making decisions and doing things. And he's like, oh. Or people are commenting, positively on his dress and are paying attention to him, which never happens.
Right. And Barbies don't pay attention to the Kens at all. So Barbie ends up finding the little girl. She's in junior high, I guess, at this point. And she's painted immediately to be like this mean girl.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, she's pretty well put together in regards to
Right.
like, she's like, so she kind of lays out the current conceit. And I guess it's not necessarily current. I mean, it's like this has been ongoing for a while, of where Barbie is a detriment to society. We haven't played with Barbies in forever, and it wasn't ever about empowerment. It was about body issues and you know, eating disorders, and so we basically thrown you away, and I don't play with you anymore. They never do anything with that.
No.
You know, that was one of the kind of the disappointing things about the movie, is that it sets so much up. It paints itself into way too many corners, but it sets up this conceit of what does Barbie mean to a world today where we have gender fluidity, and we have kids that are growing up in this kind of new era of identity, and also, yeah, for a 1950s toy with wildly disproportionate, you know, beauty standards, and obviously even body standards. I mean, I know it was done a while back. If you actually put Barbie as a real life human, she's like this grotesque, like giraffe, kind of like terrible. Like it's like the dimensions don't add up.
They don't work.
Like, what does this toy that's so desperately trying to be empowerment, but also trying to be a capitalist version and trying to make money off of empowerment, and at times doing it very, very poorly. You know, you go into Barbie land, right? And there's all different kinds of Barbies and body shapes. There's a transgender Barbie. That shit doesn't exist in the real life.
Wait, was there a transgender Barbie? Because I didn't catch
Hari Neff was Dr. Barbie was a transgender Barbie.
Okay.
And it's never really mentioned or pointed out, but Hari Neff is
right. So I think, since we brought that up, it's important to mention that Margot Robbie, her Barbie is stereotypical Barbie.
Sure, right.
And I think Gerwig is trying to do a lot of work with that. Right, with that, like, this is stereotypical Barbie. This isn't Dr. Barbie. This isn't so-and-so Barbie. It's like the OG, right? Blonde hair, gorgeous looks, all of that.
Right.
But again, right, there is nothing else. And I think I wanted even more variety in Barbie Land, with especially with body shapes.
Right. I mean, everyone still was kind of perfect for the most part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but again, even then, I think it's kind of disingenuous, because as much as they go back to it and all of the kind of meta commentary about the clothing and, you know, the branding and like how they stopped the movie down, and I think all that stuff is clever. But I do think it's disingenuous that we're having a movie from Mattel, and you're having a Barbie that in the real world would be not a 2, right?
Right.
That I don't know. I mean, I've never seen a Barbie that would wear clothing that would be, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to characterize it necessarily, but it wouldn't be like some stick thin Barbie. And I get that, again, they're trying to make money, and there's probably a mold, and there's mass production, and these things are made by, I'm sure, third world children that are pumping these things out,
that never get to play with Barbie themselves.
But I do think that that Mattel's idea of an ideal Barbie world where women run everything, and that there's all different kinds and colors of Barbie, doesn't really exist. And I think that could, again, this is the problem with biopics that are being put on by the people who, and again, I know she's not a real person, right? But I mean, this is, I get that.
No, but it is,
but
like you said, it is a product being advertised as a thing of empowerment. And so we are, in a way, sort of attaching, we're anthropomorphizing Barbie, right? As we play with Barbie, right? Or as we like, I have Supreme Court Justice Barbie. That sort of attaches, right? That kind of imaginative play attaches then like a personhood onto that toy itself. So
right, and so anytime that we do these biopics that are put on by living entities, like Straight Outta Compton is like the one that comes to mind the most right now. But I liked Straight Outta Compton just mainly because it spoke to a point in time in my life as well. But I mean, like, there's a lot that's left on the table. You know, you don't talk about Dre beating Dee Brown. I mean, like, you don't talk about JJ Fad leading the way and basically greasing the skids for that record company Ruthless to be able to sell Straight Outta Compton. So if it wasn't for the success of JJ Fad, Straight Outta Compton wouldn't have come out. They wouldn't be able to do it. And so like there's all this stuff that gets swept under the rug that they don't want to tell. And okay, so then they throw certain things that are bad, like this whole, and so that and Barbie does the same thing, but like in Straight Outta Compton, you're like, well, there's some anti-Semitism that they obviously speak to, but the black community in the 90s didn't give a shit about the anti-Semitism because they didn't really understand it, right? I mean, it wasn't part of their growing up. It wasn't part of the. So this idea of like we can show you and give you a mea culpa on the very light stuff. But the real problems that are underlying and the real kind of dirt and grime that we could be showing that could make this movie next fucking level and like really expose us as like, shit, man, yeah, we've all got, I mean, like it could actually be worthwhile. You don't do anything with it. And so in this case, you've got this idea and like, so, and the Barbie at this point just plays lip service to it, where they've got an all male, executive staff. And of course, it's played by Will Ferrell and who's buffoonish and it's fine. I mean, I like the playtime scene where they're running through the, through the offices and like, I think Greta Gerwig is a great student of film.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so like she knows what she's doing. And I think she's funny and Baumbach is funny. But I think this movie tries to do so much. And I think there was so much pressure put on Gerwig to say, you got to make this like, this has got to be a speaking for women for generations and generations and generations. And they introduce a lot of stuff, but they don't ever really follow anything up. And the things that they do follow up, which is basically, okay, we're going to give women a voice. I don't know if that voice was necessary to give in this movie. I don't know if they're saying anything new.
Right.
I guess is the question I have. And
right.
I mean, and then there's and again, I know this is not a problem that we can necessarily solve, right? I mean, like immediately in a 90-minute however long it is in a toy movie, right?
Yeah.
I don't expect Barbie to solve the patriarchy.
Well, and in fact, the movie takes away their voices and then gives it back.
Well,
which I find is strange.
So while Barbie's trying to help out in the real world, Ken has taken the patriarchy and gone back to Barbie Land and turned it into Kendom. And of course, it's as silly and as dopey as you would think it would be. It's basically if Canon Films threw up all over Barbie Land, this is what it would be. And it's funny. And so then Barbie's got to get back to Barbie Land and make everything straight in Barbie Land. And then that becomes, I think I was thinking about this too, like the way that they do that, the way that the Barbies take over and get Barbie Land back is that they keep the Kens from voting. I think it's a fucked up message.
Well, but also like the Kens basically pulled a January 6th.
Sure.
So,
but still,
yeah,
this idea
I know that was
like this idea that we're going to subvert democracy on either side of it is kind of fucked.
Right. I do like what they did with sort of turning the patriarchy on itself, right? Where it almost ate itself, where like, men are so scared of other men, right, that they will like destroy everything around them that they've built. I like that, but I just don't know why. I don't know why Ken ever needed to have that kind of agency in this film.
Right.
I mean, what would have been? And look, I'm not here to tell Greta Gerwig how to make movies, but why wasn't this a Barbie adventure movie and Ken is the stupid sidekick?
Right.
I mean,
why did you because
then it becomes almost like Ken's movie.
Right. And if the patriarchy is wrong on this side in the real world, the matriarchy has to be just as wrong in Barbie Land.
Right.
Because otherwise what you're saying is, and it's almost worse because Barbie's completely devalue Ken. There's not even sort of any sort of like level of equality. And you didn't need to paint yourself into that corner. You could have, like you said, let Ken be Scooby-Doo. Like you don't need to, like you said, you don't need to tell Ken's story. And I know it leads to a lot of in jokes, like the Matchbox 20s. And those are funny moments. Really, like when they're all sitting around on the beach and they're all singing Push and
all playing guitar.
Right. And they're all trying to get kisses.
At them. Playing guitar at you.
And there's and the mansplaining sections of it all. And like, I mean, like Gosling's perfect for this, right? I mean, he's really, really good at the Mojo Casa Dojo, or Casa
Mojo Dojo
Casa
Casa House,
right.
and Brewski Beers.
Brewski Beers. So I mean, there's like, and I think the movie kind of lulls us to sleep in a lot of ways because there's so much like little inside jokes, the Godfather pieces.
Like I missed the pavement joke, right? I mean,
right.
I'm very sad about that.
It's Stephen Malcolm's joke.
Well, and I like that. Like we watch these kins do that, and we all, I think, as men, especially men of certain ilk, we all recognize a part of ourselves in that. We hope we're not like that big of a douchebag, but like, you know, we have things that we're excited about, and we talk to people about. I mean, that's right. This isn't a podcast hosted by two trees, but
well, true. And it's you know, you go back to your January 6th comment. In reality, what happens? I think again, there's so many like ideas that they throw out. Once Barbie Land becomes kingdom, then the women start losing their losing their minds.
Yeah.
So they I mean, it's not like the kins are actively brainwashing them. They're just they're falling into a trapping of what the kins want from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost, I don't know what that message is saying. I really don't.
I know. Well, I mean, I think one of my comments to you was like, this feels like a movie of sort of two different ideas sort of smashed together. Because I mean, on one hand, I think that they're trying to play this up, right? They're like, look how ridiculous these kins are, but it doesn't actually work that way. Right. That level of irony doesn't sort of go over the top enough to make it like, oh, because I mean, here we're like, I don't get that. Why do this?
And the patriarchy here is active. Right. It is an active.
Right.
So the fact that, and you can make the argument that in Barbie Land, the matriarchy is active as well, but they don't have to, but they haven't reached the stage where kins are demand. And again, I know it's a fucking Toyland, so I get it. But the kins aren't demanding equality, right? They're enamored enough with the Barbies and their lives, but still, okay. So their lives are good enough, so they're okay with being a suppressed voice and a completely ignored. It feels like someone like Gerwig and Baumbach would have been able to like understand what they're. I mean, and again, I'm not saying that they don't understand, but like understand the implications of what they're putting out there. And it seems so weird to me that there's so much going on here that is like you said, if you lift up the covers, all of this falls apart.
Right. I mean, are they trying to say like, look, the way these kins are the way that we see most women feel and acting in the real world? I don't know.
I don't either. And again, it's because once you get to the real world, like the kins.
But why not solve patriarchy in the real world? Not in Barbie Land. I mean, in the movie. Like, why not confront patriarchy in the real world?
Right.
They never do.
Yeah, no. And then they don't, and they kind of accept the matriarchy as they go back to Barbie Land. Like this. So again, the idea here is that, okay, all we've really done for the kins, and again, I hate to sound like Proud Boys. I hate to have, and I know we're not having the same conversation, but I hate to tear it apart from a male perspective.
Well, it's right.
But to come back, all you've really done is let kins know that they don't need to require the adoration of the Barbies, which is where the kins are in the beginning of the movie. But they don't really elevate them. There's no equality now at the end in Barbie Land. And I get it, it's called Barbie Land, right? But you're right. I mean, like there's no, as much as Robbie goes over to the real world and sees the violence and the threats and the uncomfortableness and the unease, she still just focuses on herself. And okay, that's fine. That is a fine movie to have. That is a fine movie to have for where a Barbie realizes that there's more to life than Barbie Land, and that there's beauty in aging, and there's beauty in pain, and there's beauty in not being perfect. That is a fucking great message. And you kind of get there because by the time that she decides to become a Pinocchio, right? She's a real life girl, and she gets a vagina, which is a funny moment. And that's kind of a nice, like it's cool.
Yeah,
like I get that. But you introduce so much other heavy shit. Like I don't know. You could have been, all right, this is empowering, and it is a Robbie story to realize that there is beauty in what we don't consider beautiful. And there's beauty in the harshness of realities of life. And to kind of bridge that gap. It's not a new story to tell, but okay.
But it is with a Barbie doll.
Right.
I mean, right. I mean, look, there are no new stories. There are new ways to
new
there are new ways to do a podcast. But so like I really worry, and I put this kind of like in quotes, but I was like, worry? Is that the right word? That by the end of this film, what we get is a version of can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
And I worry again that Margot Robbie's character becomes manic pixie Barbie.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's there to tell Ryan Gosling, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be like this. It's okay to cry. And I'm like, why is she trying? Why does she need to fix him like we've seen in all these other films? And so I think that, I mean, your Proud Boy comment, I think one of the things we're reacting to is that it's not feminist enough.
Right.
That it's not subversive enough in that way.
Yeah, no, and even that moment, right? Even the moment of, hey, Ken, it's okay. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to doubt yourself. You don't have to be this ripped fucking god, right? It's done to market merch.
I know. And they make that look very clear.
I mean, like, so immediately I can go out and buy a $60 fuzzy Knuff hoodie.
I know.
And look, it's clever. I like the whole, but it works better if Ken says it. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, lamenting this is this is not really a kid's movie though. Like, I can't imagine little girls from 4 to
those jokes
to 11. Right. I mean, yeah, they're not going to get a pavement joke, and they're not going to know what Godfather is, right? And those are really
or Robert Evans,
right? Yes, yeah.
In the studio system in the 70s.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like little girls from 4 to 11 are going to be bored out of their fucking minds with this movie. Aside from the visuals of being kind of cool,
and I think Barbie Land is utter brilliance. The way it's constructed, the way things happen there, I think that is brilliant. And I wonder if we ever had to leave. I keep saying this like two different ideas, but like we're in two different worlds, and I think that's a detriment to the film.
Yeah. Because the having Kate McKinnon be weird Barbie and having her be the wise old sage kind of Wizard of Oz type to let her know she needs to go on. And had Barbie solved, I don't know, does it sound, is it patronizing in that sense to have Barbie solve the problems or to expose this idea? Like, what's I guess it just has to be where Barbie embraces the human flaws, I guess, in that case, because you can't have then Barbie correct the matriarchy in Barbie Land. I don't know.
But if there's again, some right. kind
Ken,
of
you should have jettisoned Alan and let Ken just be Alan. Alan be this because Alan is, I mean, Sarah's really good in this too, but but this idea of Ken is a supporter of Barbie. Right, he's always been a secondary character. And so have him lift her up and be the kind of Jiminy Cricket to Barbie's Pinocchio.
And if they're trying to make Ken into an incel, I mean, again, why? Because that takes over the narrative.
Right.
I mean,
you've got to fix that problem in addition to the other problems.
Right. I mean, because he kind of comes off as like, I want to kiss and can never get a kiss, right? I want to spend the night. Every night's girl night. He's just like, he's so sort of angry about all that. And so he comes off as this kind of incel type character. But why do that? Because then again, like all of that goes back to him and now it's his story and we're focusing on Ken.
Yeah. And
it's just not funny enough then to play up or play for laughs.
Right.
Like it doesn't.
And you focus so much on the inner turmoil. I get the idea that Kens are going to fight with one another and men fight with one another. And I really like the dialogue or the monologue of when they're starting to go to war and they're like, how are we going to know who to go to war with? We go to war with everybody. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't we'll know. Well, no, they're not. They're not us. It's like, I love that whole when they're all sitting in the dream houses together, and they're just like, we'll just go to war with everybody. We'll fight. We'll fight them all. We'll fight ourselves.
They're not us.
Like, so
I thought Simu Liu was really good too.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough here to make this movie enjoyable. I just don't think that it is. I don't know if this is a pedestal type movie that we're going to be looking at and going,
right.
Holy shit, this solved it all. I mean, like, and I know that no movie's going to do that, but I mean, like, I don't know if this movie solves its own problems that it sets up.
It's an interesting conversation to have around this film, and I think that's what movies should do, and that's what art should do, is give us a platform to have a conversation. But man, it's just, there's a lot going on, and none of it really sticks, and none of it really twists either. So.
Well, and I think it's one of those movies where I think, like, and I don't want to accuse Gerwig of doing this, but I think it's easy to not look under the covers.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you don't like, the American flag or ice cream or puppy dogs. Like, I told you women have problems. Like, I stated the problem very succinctly in a very impassioned way. How dare you question my, like, now you're a Ken, like, right? Or now you're Will Ferrell, or
right.
And so I think it's unfair to not be able to criticize this movie. And I do think this movie's kind of tried to insulate itself in a way where it's hard to criticize it because of, well, we need a feminine voice, and we need and to that degree, kudos to fucking Mattel. Because I mean, from a capitalist perspective, to put this spin on it, and now Barbie, you can reimage and reshape and reframe Barbie. Again, you don't address anything that Sasha actually says in the story.
Right, I know.
We put these away because they were harmful to us. Not just we outgrew the toys. That Barbie was actually harmful to a generation of girls. Okay. Now she's the embodiment of female power again, but also female vulnerability, and that's okay. And now fuck you to a certain extent. I mean, like, I don't know, man.
I want to make sure the listeners know that I believe the kudos was a cynical kudos.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no. I mean, like, part of me, like, I appreciate evil in its, in some of its forms. Like,
well, yes, you have to sort of tip your hat to.
Right. I mean, yeah. If Mattel was able to take an indie female director and fool her into creating a film that repositions in their much maligned toy without having to do anything besides throw about $100 million behind a movie. Man, I mean, like,
but this goes back to my comment about the kind of like faux self-flagellation. I mean, because they're going to come off as looking to a lot of people like good guys,
right?
Oh, look at Mattel, let her do this, and I'm like, Mattel's coming off pretty good here, right? They're saving a lot of face, and they know that they're going to be raking in, right, profits from merchandise here
for sure. I mean, shit, they already are.
When did they ever stop?
How much they sold just pre-movie, so you could go and dressed as, in pink, and how many Kenough hoodies did they sell?
I am Kenough. You know what? Don't buy the Kenough sweatshirt. Buy a sweatshirt from a young man named Demetrius Harmon called You Matter. Okay? DemetriusHarmon.com. Go get your You Matter hoodies. I hope he hears that and plugs it. No,
right. That'd be nice. Enough about Barbie. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. I laughed quite a bit. I mean, there were moments where I was guffawing. So I do think the gloss and the glitter work, but I just don't think it is as subversive or progressive. Nor do I think it answers all the questions that it asks in any sort of succinct way. And I think we ignore all of that because the gloss and the glitter, and we don't want to be seen as these fucking toxic masculine assholes who are going to tear down a movie that's intended to bring people.
Right. But I do think, along with that, I'll speak for you. I think we had high expectations for this film.
For sure.
I was super excited to see this film. I was super excited to see Gerwig attached to this film. And I think, I don't know, were my expectations unfair? And is that why I have this reaction? I enjoyed it. I just wanted to like it more.
Right.
You know? I mean,
well, and again, I wanted it to be, I just think this faux seriousness that we're placing on it is unwarranted.
Yeah.
Like even my wife came out of it. She's like, it just felt like they're not telling me anything new.
Yeah, my partner didn't care
I mean,
either.
it was just like, I mean, like and she was like, you know, we all like to see flashy lights in front of us, and sometimes, but I mean, like, if that's all that movie is, okay, fine, but it's not intended. That's not what it's intended to do, and that's not what people are saying about it. And I fully suspect Barbie to be nominated for Best Picture. I really do. I think it, because I think it has that. I mean, let's put a bet on it and see if it does. But because it seems like it's. I don't think it'll win, but I do think that it will grab a nom, and I do think it probably will. I mean, I do think Barbie will grab a nom as well.
Yeah, I think
and that
Barbie.
Would be a shame if she didn't.
Yeah, I think Barbie will probably lose to this next film that we're going to talk about.
I think Killers of the Flower Moon have something to say about that. But,
Okay.
I think it's a 2-horse race at this point.
Okay. Well, I mean, we kind of know my eye roll of Scorsese. I mean, he's like this fucking golden calf that everyone just holds up, and I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, look, I did not enjoy The Irishman.
No, The Irishman wasn't good.
I mean, I don't know the last Scorsese film. I was like, oh, this is.
I really enjoyed
something.
Wolf of Wall Street. I know The Departed is not his best work, but I find that, like I said before, I find that movie.
And I think I have said the same thing. It is eminently watchable. Right. I don't think it's all that great, but it's watchable. I don't know. I mean, but I think Scorsese has this in common with someone like Christopher Nolan, right? Who's Oppenheimer, we're getting ready to talk about, where, and I'm not putting you in this camp, but where certain people will just kind of lose their minds over new films by these guys.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. They just can do no wrong.
I will say I give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm excited about a new, either one of them, to be honest. But I don't, but again, there's a Gangs of New York still that exists for, or, you know, it's not like Scorsese's got a perfect batting record.
Right. But I feel like that's how we treat him. It's like he's this sainted.
Well, he's the only thing we've really got at this point I mean, like like Spielberg, Scorsese, Nolan, they're really, who else? I mean, like Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't get it. Like there's no other huge scale, like Kubrick's dead. There's no other huge scale, I mean, filmmaker at the moment that commands, that can, well, I guess Cameron to a certain extent, but that's more populous than it is more art house.
But Spielberg is hugely popular.
True, but I mean, but he also bounces back and forth. So as much as I didn't really care for Meet the Fablemans, like you still give him, okay, well, that was his arty film, right? That's not his, and he still does Bridge of Spies and BFG and these things that are kind of like one-offs. But yeah, I mean, like those are I think the big three at the moment that, and again, and Scorsese's on his way out. I mean, like, let's be honest, I don't think he has many more.
Right. I'm wondering where the Rolling Stones needle drop is going to fall in Killers of the Flower Moon.
There's just going to be a huge, like,
Sorry.
Like he used Dropkick Murphys in The Departed.
No, sure.
I haven't not gone back to The Irishman since I first like stumbled through the entire 3-hour. And see, that's the real problem with like again, going back to people who are given carte blanche to do shit for Netflix. Like, yeah, it's fine to give, but I mean, like, and I guess you're not going to tell Scorsese, but I mean, if you told him he had to do this as a theatrical release and it can't be fucking 800 years long, he would have cut some shit out. Like, I mean, like he knows how to work within the system.
Right.
And I know Killers of the Flower Moon's probably going to be 3 hours long, if not, you know, and then so at this point, there is no other Anderson to a very small population.
So these are like event directors. That's kind of what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then everything else is property, right? I mean, everything else is just, you know, we got to get excited about, and no one is anymore. But I mean, like, we got to get excited about, because it's so overpopulated, like Marvel or did you see the new trailer for D-double-G's horseshit
Exorcist. Yeah.
beginning trilogy.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me lay it out for you, man. Like, wait, just listen. Right. So The Exorcist had one little girl that was possessed. So hear me out. 2 little girls. Holy shit, man.
Mind blown.
Fucking 2 fucking girls? Why didn't we ever think of this before?
Double trouble.
I saw people losing their shit. I was just like, this looks like shit. This looks
not
like
excited.
like if and it's really funny to me that they didn't ever in the trailer say from the minds of Halloween fans.
What if it was from the team that brought you all the real girls
and Prince Avalanche
comes a new haunting story. And you just hear Paul Rudd go, "How do you not know how to gut a fish?"
Oh shit!
Oh boy,
you loved Your Highness,
didn't you?
Right?
Didn't you?
Remember how much you enjoyed The Sitter? From the minds that brought you.
That movie doesn't exist. Okay, all right. Let's talk about Oppenheimer.
We imagine a future. And our imaginings horrify us. They won't fear it until they understand it. And they won't understand it until they've used it. Theory will take you only so far. Trusted with such a weapon. But we have no choice. Is anyone ever going to tell the truth about what's happening here?
I want to throw a note on Nolan's films, and I want to acknowledge this, right? That I think it's fair to say that all of his films deal with, in some way, men of a certain ilk kind of making their way through the world, often feeling alienated, and are confronted with these choices or a big choice. There's also, in most, maybe not all, but a question of greatness to varying degree surrounding these men. I also think his movies are about the very act of filmmaking.
Yeah.
This film is, I don't think, any different than that. Right. And if anything, maybe it's a kind of culmination of these ideas. And it's also a culmination of Nolan's inability to use women in these films.
It's fucking unbelievable.
He has no idea how to use women. Yes.
Has he seen a woman?
Yes.
Like someone who could probably should be working with Gerwig.
I mean, he has these, in other films, it's a dead wife. I mean, quite literally, you've got like Inception, there's a dead wife. Memento, there's a dead wife. Here we have sort of a dead mistress, but these women are always, I don't know.
And so I just
Interstellar, the wife's dead.
Right,
Like,
and Interstellar, the reason I nearly threw up at the end of Interstellar is because he handles the emotional part of that. And I know that I know that, again, like you said, there are people who, for Nolan, can do no wrong.
Right.
I fucking hated Interstellar.
I did too.
But that whole love is what brings us together bullshit. Like, I was just like,
this is a problem in this film too.
oh, absolutely.
He can be so hammy and so melodramatic and so cheesy.
I look, I really enjoyed this movie. I really did. I think the spectacle, I think there's nobody who's really matching him on a technical level these days. No. And I know people complain about the sound mix and this doesn't have that problem, but like, I don't think from a perspective of someone who just fucking knows how to put together a beautiful goddamn film, Nolan is it right now. Nolan is it. I mean, especially from a practical perspective, because, right, you're not talking about someone like Cameron who can make shit look good on a computer. I mean, he's basically making computer games, right?
Right.
But from a perspective of sitting in a theater and watching this play out, I think Nolan is at the top of the game right now. I do think this probably will win Best Picture.
I do too.
I think Scorsese's gotten his, and I think that'll be the end of that. So I seeing this in 70 millimeter, seeing it in IMAX. I think, in the opening scene where Murphy's head is, on this, it's just like I don't think people truly understand. I know cinephiles probably do, but truly understanding to get that close up of a face in an IMAX is fucking impossible. They had to make cameras,
right? Or they had to make lenses. They had to design specific lenses to do that.
It is this. I kept going back, and this reminded me a lot of There Will Be Blood. This felt like his There Will Be Blood. And I do think this, I think he's, from a perspective of the flaws of this film, I think he's a little too in love with Oppenheimer to really, truly show.
Sure. I think that's also probably a fault. So this was based on the book American Prometheus. So I think that's probably part of the source materials problem as well.
And there's a really good documentary on
Day After Trinity.
It's on the Criterion Channel right now, and it really it doesn't go into the Strauss stuff, but it does. It basically outlines everything.
It touches on it. I mean, yeah,
and it's really, really interesting to see his younger brother on film, kind of talking about all of that. This movie had a couple. So we obviously we're just watching the genesis of the atomic bomb,
the Manhattan Project,
right, and so this is broken up, and it's a 3 hour and 2 minute long movie. It's three very succinct acts, although Nolan does play around with time because there's a hinted at court case, and America's turning on Oppenheimer, technically, potentially turning on Oppenheimer. But the first act is basically Oppenheimer's beginning life and him meeting these people that are going to influence him, Einstein, Bohr.
It also lays out his sort of leftist sympathies.
Right, yeah. So it gets him, yes. And so that's what's ultimately going to lead to his quote-unquote downfall, at least potential for a while. The second hour is the Manhattan Project, him and Damon recruiting the world's best scientists, building a city in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And then, of course, we get the beautiful spectacle on film of the bomb going off, and it's really,
and that happens like right at hour 2.
Right? Yeah. Right. I mean, honestly, it is.
That's the thing. He knows.
1 hour it is his leftist leanings and kind of setting up who he is. Second hour is Manhattan Project, and the third hour is going through the trial with Robert Downey Jr. Strauss, who's going to be
on that confirmation hearing.
Right. Yeah. So it's a confirmation hearing coupled with his behind closed doors. Renewal of his secret clearance and letting him basically, if he doesn't get his secret clearance renewed, he can no longer work in the atomic bomb. Work
in the Atomic Energy Commission.
Right. I think everything there. I think all of that is just so brilliantly done. It's so brilliantly shot. It so seamlessly goes in from IMAX to not IMAX to sound. I mean, and the use of if this doesn't win Best Sound Oscar or sound editing, and there's no fucking way, right? I mean, it has to. The sequence with the bomb and the 4 minutes of silence, and then you feel it. This idea that in some sort of film trickery where makes you think that you're filming, that you're feeling it, and your clothes are shaking, and the couple of, and obviously we both love this. I don't, and we both love Pew, and I know we keep going over this. I think Pew is really good in this.
I do too.
I think, but as much as I like seeing people naked, right? I don't I don't know why any of that was necessary. I don't know why this sex scenes, like, you're given hints of Oppenheimer being this womanizer, but you really only see it with two. One is a communist who he falls in love with early in his career, and then he basically steals the wife of another person in Emily Blunt. Pugh's scenes, I don't know. What are your thoughts on? I mean, like on those and why they're actually ever included in the movie?
I think that this was sort of what a 13-year-old thinks is sexy. I mean,
right. Because there's no fucking way that scene actually went down in real life the way that it goes down in this movie.
No,
like,
okay.
She doesn't get off by him reading her
the
Sanskrit.
Bhagavad Gita, right? I mean, so yeah, the way they introduce his famous line, right? I'm become death, destroyer of worlds, is where she pulls the Bhagavad Gita off the shelf in his bedroom in the middle of sex, has him read the original Sanskrit, right? And it turns her on even more. And that's what he says. And it's just fucking stupid. It's again, like, this is a cheesy moment. It is let me make a sexy movie, right? Because has he ever done anything like that in these films before? Right. So now it's time to put a sexy spin on this. And I just think is
it his only sex scene?
I think so.
It has to.
Because I was just thinking of, like, there's nothing in Memento with Carrie-Anne Moss.
No.
And that would have been the only other.
And then
what other movies?
Prestige. There was nothing in Prestige. Like, there's nothing in...
Nothing in Insomnia. Maura Tierney stays clothed the entire time.
Much to our chagrin.
Nothing really in Batman.
No, and there's nothing in Inception, right? I mean, there's... So...
or Tenet.
Right. So I don't know. Like, why... I don't... Aside from padding out time, which you don't need to do in this... Look, you just need a movie that's divisible by 3.
And right. And the second sex scene where they're just sitting in chairs, naked, smoking, and talking. They could have been in robes. Look, but it's just. I feel like it's just a way to say, look at Florence Pugh's boobs.
Right. Which sounds like weird for us to be like.
I know. Because, like, why wouldn't we love pudity, right? I mean, sorry. But again, like, what does it? But I think this is always. This is the question of, if you include these things, to what end? Why are you including them?
Right, and so the scene where he's being interrogated. What the hell? What the fuck is wrong with me? Interrogated.
You have pew boobs.
So now we were like, we're not Proud Boys, and then we started to do this meathead conversation.
But we are 12-year-olds, right?
The scene where he's being interrogated, and it's it's in Emily Blunt's mind. They're talking about her and his affair with her, and then so that scene. Again, I don't necessarily know why that's all necessary, but I understand that, okay, now you've got Pugh staring in daggers at Blunt, and Blunt is kind of, like, I can understand that that's showing this from Blunt's perspective of, like, how this must feel, is that this is happening in front of her again. I get that. That's not a bad sequence, but, and then when you pull back and he's naked in front of all of them as well, you almost, like, then turn it completely away from the pain that Blunt is feeling.
Right.
To the pain that Oppenheimer's feeling. Which, again, then fuck you, give her something, right? Which this movie never does. It treats her like an alcoholic shrew.
It gives her one moment.
Yeah,
when she testifies.
Yeah, well, yeah,
and when she testifies with, and really turns all those men kind of on their heads. But that's it.
But and it doesn't. Like, it's crazy to me. Why does this movie feel the need to, even if it's historically accurate, why does this movie need to paint her as an alcoholic bad mother for the second act, right? And then have her come to be a champion, and really, it's not ever explained, like, why she bears the slings and arrows of her husband's constant infidelity.
Right.
And again, I know women in the 40s and 50s, and I mean, like, they just stayed with their husbands because the divorce wasn't, and she probably forgave him because he was a prominent figure, and he probably was, who knows, right? We don't know because we're not given that story. Why fucking include it?
Right.
Like, I mean, like, at that point, if she's gonna become a side note to his story, then don't fucking degrade her. Like, just let her be a doting, ignorant wife who didn't know about and also the infidelity doesn't. I mean, like the fact that he was a brilliant mind was enough to get all this scientists around. You didn't need the charisma of him like being around women to also convince you that he was charismatic. The fact that, so you don't necessarily need to even, and again, I'm not, as I just said, I'm not from a biographer picture to sweep under the, sweep the ugly stuff under. But this story is clearly not wanting to tell the story completely. And so why include it at all?
Right.
Like, why go through that?
I mean, there are other ways to show the infidelities than having, Florence Pugh naked in a hotel room.
And you're giving Blunt nothing to do.
Right.
And you make, like I said, you degrade her character at the beginning and make her seem like that Oppenheimer's got to carry this other burden of her while he also has to create the atomic bomb. The other thing that I found interesting too is that I do feel like you said, this movie loves him too much, and that if you're going to make a rated R movie, like it was surprising to me that Nolan really stayed away from the actual horrors of the atomic bomb and what actually happened when it was dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You get some of that. You get some of the in the rally sequence,
in the celebration speech.
But even that's really tame. And again, I'm not necessarily advocating for a huge amount of gore, but just like what looks like fake skin flapping in the wind is really kind of undermining what actually happens.
Well, think about what they did in Terminator 2.
Right, which could have been just as easy. Like, you could have shown a Japanese playground or something. You could have shown something, right? Yeah. And the idea of like, okay, whether or not we think it's necessary, where they thought it was necessary, it doesn't. The only thing that the only thing you really like do is, you put him in front of Truman, and Truman like takes the decision making away from him, and then essentially calls him a pussy, and then makes him leave his office. So you're given some sort of like level of compassion for Oppenheimer. But I do think that they toy with Oppenheimer being more nefarious than what the movie plays him out to be, especially at the beginning, because he poisons that apple.
Oh, right.
And like you have this idea of that Oppenheimer, in order to achieve his goals, will at least toy around with the idea of harming people. And that he and I think that's an interesting nugget that they don't do anything with.
No, because this movie is also a lot about like the potential dangers of technology to humanity.
Right.
But I think that's also what these specific kind of great minds forget about, because someone like Oppenheimer is so enamored with theory, with creation, with like, can I? Not necessarily should I. Right. But again, like that's not really touched on there. And we see him sort of have this moment of going back to get the apple, but there's no going back to get the atomic bomb. Right. I mean, they know what's going to happen. They know the potential here, even if it is just theory. And some of them, and they do show that some of the scientists wanted to stop. Right after Germany surrendered, they were like, "Well, what's the point? Let's just stop." Right. That's always the thing, right? These men, these quote unquote great men, are going to step on everyone else's neck just to do that thing, whether they should or not.
Right. And then I think the last thing that kind of like,
this is why I'm still down here on the bottom.
Absolutely. You got to step on necks. Snap necks and cash checks, brother.
Oh my God.
Just like my fucking tattoo in the back, around my torso says. The other thing that I think Nolan is starting to fall in love with, it's becoming his crutch, is his use of cameo actors.
Oh yeah,
and it's to the point where I'm looking at people and going, "Hey, is that Gary Oldman?" Or "Hey, is it?" Like, I thought it was really poorly done in Interstellar when you meet Matt Damon halfway through, and I'm like, okay, well now what the fuck? Matt Damon hasn't been here the entire time. Like now I'm like, why did you include this huge megastar actor in this role? Because now I'm thinking, oh well, now I'm watching Matt Damon. So now I'm looking at every single scene, and I get it; they're all good actors. But I don't know. I don't necessarily need to see like where have I seen that fucking guy before, or like is that Dane DeHaan because he kind of looks a little different and like I haven't seen him in a really long time. And then I'm like, oh wait, is Albert Einstein somebody? No, he's nobody. He's just a fucking guy. You know, he's just
who
a guy.
looks like Einstein,
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you can do that with Einstein, why the fuck are you doing it with anybody?
Yeah.
Like okay, you get Hartnett and you get Cillian and you get Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
and you're good, right? I mean, you're good.
I mean, no one really knows Benny Safdie.
Right. I don't mind Safdie.
Right.
Or like Josh Peck or anything like. I mean, like all
or Gustav Skarsgård. I mean,
right.
No, I just mean like these are good actors who are like, okay, yeah.
Right, but even like Jack Quaid at this point is kind of like becoming a little too like. All right, well, I'm seeing so many people pop up, but I will say I can forgive like the men who are not in makeup, but then when I start to look at like I said, when I start to look at is Truman Gary Oldman?
Yeah.
Like why do that? Because now I'm just like I'm taken out. I'm not watching Truman, right? I'm watching Gary Oldman portray Truman, and it would be one thing if this was a Truman movie that had Gary Oldman in the lead role of Truman, because I didn't really mind Casey Affleck. Like I think that comes in and adds like. And I don't know why that doesn't bother me, whereas the Matt Damon thing does. But there's just so many of
well, they're
them.
different. They're stars on different levels.
True.
I mean,
true. I don't know. I do think that there's a saturation point for this. This is not like Shyamalan having to always do a twist ending, but I mean it does.
But we saw this with Asteroid City too.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a problem when you. And this is not a stable of players that he's using that are over. I mean, it's Murphy, Damon, to a certain Oldman. He's used Oldman quite a bit, but I mean, like, but these are not guys that
he used them in Batman. What else did he use?
That's
Oldman
basically it. I think. I don't know if he's been anything else.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about those Batman films?
I think looking back on them now. Look, I think that's I going back to 20-year-old me being upset about Buffalo Tom going on My So-Called Life or Modest Mouse going in an Apple commercial. I do think that I wanted to see more Memento and Prestige Nolan than I wanted to see Batman Nolan. I think that they're fine. I think that they introduced a era of superhero films that are like, it's one of those things like we go back to the beginning of this and like, we want studios to listen to this. We really didn't want studios to listen to ultra gritty, realistic. It works for Batman because Batman's not a superhero. Right. He's a billionaire.
He's a detective.
Right. Yeah, he's the world's greatest detective. He's a billionaire who has toys that allows him to fight other super villains. And none of them are genetically modified. They're criminally insane, and they also have so that works. But when you try to do it to Superman, who's an actual alien from another planet, it doesn't fucking play.
Yeah.
I think they're fine. I think obviously Dark Knight I think Dark Knight is a movie that's parts are greater than its sum.
Yeah.
Like there are sequences that are just amazing, but I think there's one really above par movie and the other two are okay Batman films.
Yeah.
But I do think, and I get why they had to shift to a certain extent, but I do think Batman plays better in Burton's world or the 1960s Batman, where it's a lot more playful because it's a silly concept. When you put Batman into the real world, Batman becomes a fucking fascist. Right. I mean, so now we're championing this guy who, like Bane, just wants to give the world back to the workers, right? He wants to basically introduce socialism and steal these billionaires' money and bring him back down on the level, literally breaking his back. But we're supposed to go on into this this is like cheering on Musk or Zuckerberg. Like it's not like we shouldn't be wanting to. This guy could do so much more by spending millions on social programs than being this fucking narcissist who goes into a bat cave and starts beating people up. But alas, here's where. And again, I know it's a Barbie movie, right? It's a toy. I get it. I don't give a shit. But again, if you're gonna tell a story where it's where everything is day glow. and we can do kicky, and we got
right. Like, why ever leave?
Right.
Well, I mean, you can have problems happen, right, in Barbie Land.
Right. so I think, I mean, like, I don't ever go back to Begins or the Dark, whatever the Dark Knight. What's the last one called? Returns some tapes. I don't know. The Dark Knight returns some VHS tapes.
Night Rises.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Rises. But I mean, like, the Dark Knight, I'll watch the opening sequence of the Dark Knight if it comes on. And then if Heath Ledger's on the screen, I'll watch him. But I don't find Bale a particularly compelling Batman.
No.
And of course, that's always been the problem with Batman, right? And that's probably the problem with superhero movies in general, is that the villains are the more enjoyable characters. But specifically in Batman movies, they're always more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Which is why Gunn tapped into that with the Suicide Squad. I mean, it makes sense.
Oh, right. Okay, I don't want to talk about superhero movies anymore. What just happened there? I guess I shouldn't have asked that question.
That was your fault.
I was just thinking about like the sort of distinct periods of Nolan's filmmaking and how that ushered in something new.
Right.
I mean, really kind of like took a split. And then I think it's led to stuff like this, even though I really like Tenet. I like Tenet a lot. I like this, but I think
I liked Inception quite a bit.
Yeah, I liked Inception too.
I didn't like Interstellar.
No, I didn't either. But I do think this sort of Batman stuff ushered in this different maybe vision of filmmaking from Nolan. Right?
It's surprising to me that he did the full trilogy. It's really surprising to me that he didn't like just step away, especially after Ledger died. Like, maybe he was contractually obligated to do so, but like, and I get that.
Also, it'd be weird to have like a trilogy not from the same guy, in terms, just because I think his filmmaking is very specific,
right,
and how his movies look. And then if you had a third one that was like, and
maybe it was a full story that they had that they wanted to tell. I don't know. That over a course of 3 movies, I don't know.
The chance to work with Marion Cotillard. Okay. Can we move on?
Sure. Yeah.
Or do you want to keep going on these two films for like another 2 hours?
No, I think, I do want to come back and say I do really think Oppenheimer is the better movie of Barbie, of the Barbenheimer thing. And I do think that it is a stellar, fantastic film, aside from the flaws that we kind of tear it apart with. I think Downey Jr. is great. I think Cillion's great. I think for a 3-hour film, even with its flaws, it never feels like it's dragging. I sat there enthralled the entire time. And I only looked at my watch because I could notice the beats and I wanted to see where the beats were happening. And it was like, holy shit, that's like right on the money. Like, it's crazy.
That was interesting. I mean, and again, this is a filmmaker who uses time in a very, very specific ways.
Sure.
And I know that people use that as a kind of stick to beat him with, which I don't understand. Like, I don't understand the sort of, Nolan time, and that's dumb, and I hate when he plays with time. And it's like, this is someone who's interested in how a story is told, the structure of a film, and how it's made. He's going to play with narrative structure. He's going to, he's told us that from the very beginning, from his very first 2 films, right? I'm playing with this.
And I do like that he is making movies specifically for the world's biggest theaters and the biggest screens.
So this goes, back to my comment about Sarah Polley, right? And these are 2 very different filmmakers, and I think that's my point, is that no one is interested in what can I do with IMAX cameras, what can I do with 70 millimeter film, what can I do with building a town literally from the ground up, like this town. And I don't think a filmmaker like Sarah Polley is interested in that as much, and that's why the Bambi thing is not appealing to me. Right. Now, what if Christopher Nolan did a live action Bambi? It'd probably have this like ominous score throughout the whole thing.
Right. Bambi would be a drunk. And Bambi would be, Bambi is male. Never mind. What the fuck?
Bambi would be sort of like walking in the forest, sort of contemplating his purpose and his quote unquote greatness. I want to make sure that I keep putting that greatness in quotes, right?
Right.
Feeling alienated, right? Flower would try to convince him of things, but it would never quite work.
I do think that it was funny that Rami Malek only had like 3 sentences in Oppenheimer. He's in like 5 or 6 different scenes. So they just keep him quiet.
Like stands there.
Like that's a testament to wanting to work with Nolan, of course.
Yeah.
But again, like, do you need Rami Malek for that role?
No.
And again, but that isn't really. It doesn't. It's funny to me just because it's a moment of like, okay, when he's not talking, I'm like, he's so like enamored with the fucking just. I'm gonna show up and work with Nolan. That I'll just show up and do shit. And like, if he lets me speak, I'll speak, and if not, I won't.
And just look around.
Yeah, it's but that was such a fun moment. Like obviously when they're turning the tables on Downey Jr.'s Strauss. That it's just I think Murphy and Downey Jr. will both be nominated. I think Downey Jr. has a really good
for supporting.
Winning. Yeah, he's
fantastic.
Good in it, yeah.
I think this movie is also a testament to what this system does to people. How in one moment they hold you up, the next moment they tear you down.
Right.
These political machinations, backroom dealings, it doesn't matter what you've done for us. It only matters kind of what you can do or if you're in our way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sitting there watching, especially as like everything's kind of crumbling around Downey Jr. There are moments that I like. Johnny Be Good is a shit movie. It's
yeah,
but there's a scene in that movie where Downey Jr. is with 2 girls in a hotel room, and he's just rambling, just kind of talking. Like I was just like, holy shit, this is like a perfect callback to like Downey Jr. and the level of acting that he brought to the table, and even in a shitty little Johnny Be Good movie, bringing it back around to something like an Oppenheimer. Now we're gonna finally recognize it, but like it was always there all along. Like Junior, like he's got an amazing career. I mean, I know he derailed because of drugs, and then of course Favreau takes a chance on him and does but like all of the small indie stuff that he was doing, even the Hughes stuff that he was doing. I mean, he has his dad in him, so much, that kind of like just subversive filmmaker, and like just that. It's weird to me the amount of shit they allowed him to get away with from an improv, because there's no way that was written on any of those type of kind of diatribes that he did in those earlier movies. That was actually written and allowed to
just let him go. You just sort of wind him up and let him react to stuff around him, right? And see what happens. And I think also like I don't think we'd call him a physical actor, but his mannerisms and his physicality on screen, I think also add another layer to his performance. I mean, the way he holds his hands and the way that he will like lean his temple on like his knuckles, his finger. I mean, it's a very specific kind of way of holding his arm. He's great, and it's too bad that he derailed himself with drugs. But maybe we wouldn't have gotten the same. Maybe we wouldn't have gotten the same Robert Downey Jr. performances that we have. I'm gesticulating a lot today, and I'm kicking things and knocking things off the table.
All right, let's get to Cassavetes.
Okay, let's talk about Cassavetes. So
I watched Nick's first 2 films. Is that what we're talking about today?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And Zoe's work with Sofia Coppola.
Yes.
So John Cassavetes, right, born in 1929, died in 1989. So at a young age, 59, terrible alcoholic. He has been called an iconoclastic maverick and one of, if not the most influential American directors of the last half century. Mostly known for his independent filmmaking, right? Cinema verite and improvisational aesthetic. Maybe a better term is observational cinema.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he received 3 Oscar nominations. 1 as an actor for the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah.
1 for the screenplay of Faces, and then a director nom for A Woman Under the Influence.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. And so this is, I mean, I think this is sort of setting the stage for the films we're going to talk about. But Cassavetes hated the method, right? The method style of acting.
Which is all what was going on at the time.
Right.
Right. So he's in New York. And yeah, this is basically...
He's like fresh out of school, really, right?
Yeah.
In 1956, he starts his own kind of acting class with Burt Lane. And it's like this anti-method thing, right? And so his idea, and you know, feel free to shed some light on this, but the idea was that it was more based in character creation, right? A character kind of creating their masks as they interact and react to other characters, rather than using past experience, past trauma or whatever to figure out the motivation of a particular character or a psychology of a particular character. Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like everything that was like coming before, you know, in your steeped in Hays Code filmography is coming from, it's seemingly playwrights, right? I mean, like you're mired in this world of like stage direction and hitting your marks and hitting your lines exactly, and that comes through in like in your black and white film noir movies from the 40s and 50s, where everything almost is stilted to a degree where there's no humanity. And I say that's not true in every case, but like you look at those movies, and I love those movies, but again, there's a lot of emotion stripped from that,
right?
And it's also everything is like a Raymond Chandler novel where it's all just like boom, 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 boom. Like I'm just this rat-a-tat dialogue, not realistic, but also it's just, and there's some beautiful filmmaking there. But I can obviously see why you'd want to, especially when you're watching French New Wave and this kind of early mumblecore and that's coming out of that. And wanting to do something different, and you can see where again, Elaine comes up with like keeping the camera on him, right? It comes out of this school of like, let's just see where shit takes us. I don't need to know where. I don't want to know. I know that this character is going to do A, B, and C, and then this other character is going to do X, Y, and Z, right? And now, but let's see what happens when they've done that, and we'll go to the next step.
So there's a great anecdote from Peter Falk. I was watching A Constant Forge, the documentary on Cassavetes. And Peter Falk is talking about the scene in A Woman Under the Influence where he's at the table and he's telling the story about like, a couple years ago, I didn't see any kids. And now I see like all these baby carriages everywhere and there must be something in the air. And Falk is like, everyone's laughing at me. He's like, I don't understand what I'm saying. And everyone at the table, they don't understand either. And so we're all laughing about it. And then the documentary cuts back to the scene where he like is trying to explain this thing, and he's like, I'm just trying to figure out like what I'm saying. He goes, I don't know the motivation here. I don't care. Why would I? He's reacting to everyone else reacting to him, and that leads to then this kind of ongoing dialogue of them just trying to figure out what it is he's trying to say, right? And so I think that really sort of centered it. I mean, for me, in terms of like watching that.
Yeah. So his first film, Shadows. It's a complete improvisational. So it started.
Well, it grew from an improv in class,
right?
And I think something else about this class. And again, I might be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I don't want to be right here, right?
Right.
So Cassavetes is teaching this class, and I think everybody had to pay like $2 or $3, including Cassavetes. So he's leading the class, but he had to pay as well. Right? But yeah, so Shadows started as like an improv exercise.
And basically the whole, the improv scene was a young white man is dating a light-skinned black girl, and he finds out that he's in an interracial relationship when he meets her darker-skinned brother. And that's it. That's the story born out of this. Now the movie itself, is loosely about three siblings. One is a jazz, kind of an aging, and it basically not aging, but like he's a jazz singer who
he's a workman jazz singer, but he's struggling.
And the industry seems to be moving beyond him. He's never really kind of gotten his break.
Right. Now his agent is like the one person who really believes in him.
Right. The sister, who is a writer.
Wants to be a writer. And she's kind of in I wouldn't necessarily say she's in a relationship where she's in a relationship with an older man. And he is a writer. He's a novelist.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's kind of mansplaining a lot of.
Well, I think it feels more like a mentor-mentee relationship.
Right.
And I know that we're supposed to think it's kind of boyfriend-girlfriend, but there's no real intimacy between the two of them.
Right.
Right.
It's almost like he wants there to be, but he's also playing the role of mentoring her. And so like he has to be cool when she goes off with the other guys.
Yeah.
But he wants to be in that position.
Right.
And then the younger brother is kind of a ruffian who's, he's just hanging out with his boys, hitting on girls,
but he's also a trumpet player.
And
it seems like to me anyway that he is the most talented of kind of everyone around. But he just wants to drink, get in fights, and chase girls.
Yeah. And so we are brought into, we follow all three of them at different stages. Basically, every scene that we have is a problem that's only then resolved by yet another problem. We see the sister, we see the actual, bigotry play out. That actually is still in the film. We see the brother struggle with, a variety of different gigs and he ends up at a burlesque I guess it's a burlesque club or some sort of like dancing girl club type thing.
And his job is to introduce the girls after he's done singing,
right,
but they cut him off half the time.
Right. And it's hard to put a finger on like really kind of describing. This is an hour and 25-minute movie where you're just,
this film is like jazz.
Right.
I mean,
it really
it's very much a beat era film too. I mean, I think he started filming in like 57, 58,
Right.
57 and then finished in 58. And so it's very much like a beat era New York film, but it plays like jazz. I mean, there's a kind of structure, but also that saxophone player is going to sort of go off in his own direction and come back to that structure, right? I mean, and that's how I feel about that film, is that it's
for being an improvisational film. And of course, these two films are in stark black and white. I was really impressed with his camera placement and how he was able to capture all the performances. The performances are all over the place. The actors and the actors school. I mean, these are all friends of his or people that are in his acting class. So the performances wildly vary. I think this was.
And
shot
I think
for
Lane was coaching some of these actors too.
Yeah, and this was shot for $40,000. I mean, and there was an initial version that went out, and then everyone hated it except for like one critic.
Jonas Mekas.
Yes.
Who's not just a critic.
I know.
I mean, I think he would have been like the preeminent kind of experimental filmmaker at that time, right? And that's why he loved the 58 version, is because it was experimental. And then he said the 59 version, he was like,
pissed him off.
Everything good about the other version, he just ruined.
right.
So,
and this movie wasn't well received. And he ends up going to Johnny Staccato, which is a PI TV series to end up paying off the debts for this.
But again, like back to what we said about these directors, I mean, this is what he did, right?
Right,
He took
right.
these acting jobs to then pay for this other stuff.
I think the camera placement and movement, and also the black and white underplaying the skin tones of the people that are in the movie, like it, because you don't ever know if Layla is. I'm saying her name right.
That's how I would say, yeah.
If she's actually, like, when you see her first, she does not present as a black woman, and she's not actually in real life a black woman. Like, she actually lost out roles because of this, because people thought that she was black.
Yeah.
But it plays so well, and it plays to those tropes so well, and it's just I don't know, it's so beautiful to watch, even if it's not always compelling. Like, and there are certain scenes where this drags. This is not his, obviously. This is a student film for all intents and purposes, right? This is him figuring it out.
But you see so much in this film.
Right. No, but what he also does so well is this level of cinema verite just didn't exist at this time. Like, no one was, especially in America, was doing this. So the idea that you're going to take a camera and you don't have a you don't have a story, you don't have a fucking script,
and you don't have permits.
Right. And the fact that he was able to really capture like Times Square and New York City. Like, this is such a movie that's steeped in like as like dirty and grimy as like Taxi Driver is. This movie like makes all of this stuff look wonderful. Like no other, we've said this before, but like movies that I want to live in and like be, I would love to have been like in Cassavetes' class. Because what's crazy, I don't know how progressive this really was, but I'm assuming for a 59 movie being centered on an interracial relationship and also calling out the bigotry. Right. Because so and it's, Layla is, she's under the wing of David, I think is
David is his name.
Is of her kind of mentor. And she meets up with this guy named Tony, and she gives herself sexually to him. She like actually kind of pursues him. And it's and that whole sequence, or like, I think Layla's like, it had just been a movie that was focused on Layla, and because she's so, I don't think she's necessarily the best actress, especially not in this particular role, but like she's so magnetic and like beautiful to look at, like, and like her journey through this of like having her like pursue a sexual interest, because almost like she's trying to get out from underneath David's tutelage and like kind of establish herself with her two brothers. But also kind of falling under the trappings of being a young girl, having sex for the first time, and then letting your heart lead with that, and kind of falling, being disappointed by the actual act itself, and then kind of like the scene where she's in bed with Tony and like he's kind of apologizing for not knowing it was her first time, and she's like, well, what do we do now? Do I live with you? Do I love you? Like, I mean, like, it's such a, like, for 59 to be put on scene like that, and like and that being an improv scene.
So what I read and what I heard about this film and all of his films too is that a good chunk of it is improv, but he has certain bits of dialogue, he has certain bits of things, and then Jenna Rowland said this. She's like, everyone thinks everything was just improvised, but here's the thing. She's like, we had scripts, but what happens when you get in there? You're going to react to the way someone stands, to the way someone says something, to the way someone moves. That's where the improv comes in, right? And so I think that was part of this scene as well, because the one thing that she says, I didn't know it could be so awful.
Right.
And that is a heartbreaking line.
Right.
I mean, and he's just like, oh shit. But then, and then she follows it up with, so what do we do now? Do I move in here with you? And I can never tell, because I've watched this multiple times, if she's being serious or if she's being sarcastic in that moment.
Right.
And I mean, I love that kind of ambiguity too, because she is from the very beginning smarter than she lets on to a lot of these guys. And you see her kind of choose when she acts independently and when she sort of like swerves to different sort of modes and sort of ways of being. And I think that's brilliant, right? And so this is a moment where I'm like, is she serious or is she just playing with this dude where she's like, but I don't know.
I don't know, but I think once you know they're at the house together, and then when her brothers come in, she does genuinely seem to be upset by his bigotry, right? And her brother can sense the unease once you know that whole sequence where he's like telling her that he'll see her tomorrow, but then when
I've got to go, I've got an appointment. I've got an appointment.
I didn't tell you about it. I got an appointment. And then when the brother comes over and it's like, I want you to leave. I don't want you to hurt my sister anymore. And he's like, no, let me stay. Like, you want to come to lunch with us tomorrow? And like, he's like now trying to backtrack on it all. I mean, like I said, this is not a perfect film by any means, but like laying the groundwork of like doing something completely new, and putting that type of like, so the point being that the bigotry is looked down upon in a 1959 film where you would, I would imagine audiences were like understandably like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he want to get out? He can't be sleeping with a black girl. Like, I mean, it's just, but also Cassavetes like knowing, and putting all that out there of like, this is the guy who's in the wrong, and this is ridiculous that he's acting this way, and of course the brothers are right to protect her in this scenario.
I think because so many of Cassavetes' characters, I mean, especially like Mikey and Nicky, come off as
kind of racist assholes,
to find how progressive his films are, and I think that he understands how to write women as well. And I'm sure that comes from input from other people, that he's not just like, I understand, I'm the one man in the world who understands women. But like his women characters, I'm like, okay, this guy is not playing with stereotypes or tropes here. He's like letting women be women.
I mean, can you think of another film that treats virginity and the losing of virginity that way? I mean,
and in such like a realistic way as well. Yeah.
Right. As you're in bed, and realizing that it was a huge mistake what you just did, but also then realizing the repercussions of what you just did and what that means for your relationship with this person, and like, and knowing that, I don't know, knowing that even the one act was bad, that it's not, I don't know, that whole, like you said, like, what do we do now? It is that's so well done.
It's so great. Yeah, I'm really interested in the Benny character as well, because there's a moment at some point through the film I'm wondering if this isn't actually his story,
right? And
of course also like the way it ends too with Benny and Hugh, that's the older brother, right? They get into this fight, which seems to happen a lot, and this This time, it seems like the big one where Benny's going to leave and never come back. And then, you know, they sort of make up and then everything seems okay. And you think that Benny's going to sort of change his ways, right? He's actually going to kind of go forward and do something different, which I guess was not the case in the 58 version.
Right.
Where that fight, that kind of Benny walking off happens earlier in the film so that he just stays the same.
Right.
Which is interesting. But because we open the film with Benny and we sort of, do we close the film with Benny?
I think so.
Right? Because we get Hugh and his agent running to the bus, and then we get basically Benny walking into the night.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think, but again, I mean, this is kind of like jazz structure of the film where we kind of go off and then come back and then go off and then come back.
I love Benny's crew. Who's the guy that has like the great like mug? He was in it. He's a character actor.
Is it Tom Reese?
Yeah, Tom Reese.
Yeah, he's got this.
He's just got this face. It's got like too much skin and too many bones and like too much hair. And it's just like he reminds me.
He's a big dude,
right? He reminds me of Mickey Rourke in Sin City.
Yeah,
like, it's just that kind of like look. He looks like he's drawn, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great face for a black and white film. I know he went on to do other things, but like it's such a great like visual.
You know who hated this film?
Janet Maslin.
Pauline Kael.
Pauline Kael. I don't know. I said Janet Maslin. I think I looked her up a minute ago. But
so apparently,
I can see that. I mean, like I can see most not getting this. If you're coming from, look, if you're coming from watching these other like Sunset Boulevard, and these, or Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, or like you're not gonna like this. This movie starts screaming at you immediately.
Oh,
like it's seconds, and then it's just like this rock and roll score, or and it's just like blaring.
No, it is. It's like I mean, it's such like a beatnik scene. When I mean, the sort of dancing in the club and that music, and then we shift into something different.
And this idea of non-polished actors and varying levels of line reads, and also then you're just moving, like you said, you were just moving. At that one point where he was trying to learn how to tell a joke, and then we go into like those two old vaudeville guys talking about like, I really love that scene. It was just like they're just trying to like get to the etymology of that joke. It's so much fun. I don't tell jokes. It's not what I do.
So Pauline, they were at like some like college film society event. Both of them were there, and Pauline Kael got up for like 20 minutes and just railed against this film. They ended up sharing a cab somehow, and she had like this kind of coat with her on the seat, and Cassavetes stole it. And she had to come to his house and like bang on his door to get it. He snuck out the back and put it in her car and like let her in. Another time, I think she, made some other shitty comment about, he tried to get her barred from like press screenings for his movies because she was, so Kael, Cassavetes, and Castle were in a cab together. Cassavetes took her shoes off her feet and threw them out of the window.
That's horrible, but it's funny.
So here's the thing. This is why Cassavetes is my hero. Like that's it right there.
Castle's not in this much, but I do. And when we get,
but he served as like an associate producer, I think, too. He's been with them from the beginning.
God, wouldn't you love to have a fucking young Seymour Castle as your friend, like just to hang around with?
He's hot, dude.
Yeah, when we get into
and faces, he's smoking.
Yeah, he's a.
I mean, even though his name's Chet.
Right. I love stories like that. There was a story I just recently screened Pink Floyd The Wall, and there's a story about Geldof's in a back of a cab, and his agent's pitching him the role, and Geldof's like, "This is the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard." And like, the guy driving the cab is Roger Waters' brother.
Oops.
He needed to get in the role. Do you want to jump into the next?
You want to do Two Late Blues?
Yeah.
Okay, so
this has, it's similar. Like honestly, and I was sitting there watching them, and it helps watching them back to back because obviously, what's the agents in both of them? Not the agent in Two Late Blues, but Rupert Cross. Yeah, he's in both movies, right?
He plays Rupert in Shadows and then Baby,
right,
in Two Late Blues.
So it almost seems like you could have just gone like. like Too Late Blues is another thing that's just happening in the second, universe essentially. Like this is all like
right.
So it just felt like these are two movies that are just kind of, and I know that this was not Cassavetes' dream. He wanted Rollins, he wanted Montgomery Clift, which I think, God, I wish we'd have seen that movie. I think Darren's pretty good in
I do
this.
too.
It's
I do
weird,
too.
and it's weird to me how much he looks like Spacey. Like I know Spacey did the biopic, but like it's pretty.
It's true. Right.
But I think aside from Darren's, like Montgomery Clift, I think has a better physicality. But I think almost Darren's slight frame works for Too Late Blues. So why don't you give us the
Well, this is
synopsis
real
of Too
quick.
Late
Yeah,
Blues?
this is
again,
Cassavetes. What?
These are just like the plot roles for these.
This is Cassavetes' studio film though with Paramount, right? And so Bobby Darin stars as Ghost. He's this ideological musician who would rather play his blues in the park to the birds, right, than compromise himself. He meets and falls in love with a kind of wannabe singer, right? Jess Polanski. She kind of plays Yoko, right? In that her very presence kind of comes between him and his bandmates in this culminating event, and everything sort of goes to shit.
Yeah, and Jess is the lady of his agent.
It's a weird, well,
kind of at the beginning.
This is something else that I really like about Cassavetes is how he is pretty frank about sex. I mean, we just talked about the shadows, but he's frank about sex, and he is interested in sort of the complexities of love and relationships. And this is one of those complex relationships where you don't get the idea that Jess loves Benny, the agent, nor that Benny loves Jess.
Right.
But Jess is hot, and Benny likes hot girls that he can kind of control, promise like success, and then sort of nag and keep down.
Yeah, and Jess
has been gaslit to
Jess is
just to
I mean, Jess is borderline suicidal throughout the entire movie, and then of course, there is a scene where she tries to kill herself. But yes, I mean, she's a tragic figure,
and she will say things akin to like, "Well, I screwed it up again, didn't I?" And you're like.
And this is a woman who is talented. She's got a beautiful voice, but has no self-confidence, and that. She's at a party at the beginning of the movie, accompanying this piano player, and seemingly playing fine, but she just doesn't really know the ins and outs of how all of this works.
Right.
Like she starts singing notes that she shouldn't sing, and then she gets embarrassed with herself and leaves, and turns to Benny for some sort of, comfort. And Benny's like, "Yeah, no, you fucked it up." Like, he didn't use that language, but he's like, "Yeah, no,
but pretty much."
It's like, you sing pretty, but man, you screwed it up, baby. That's not going to work out. We're going to have to find something else.
And of course, she has no self-confidence because men like Benny continue to just put her down and destroy her self-confidence.
Why wasn't Crawford a bigger actor? I know he was a producer, but man, that guy was good.
I know. He
so
is,
and intimidating. And he has a face like you look like he seems like he's somebody else you've seen it before.
Chambers,
yes. Sorry, not Crawford. Yeah, but
so that's what I was watching this. I'm like, I've seen this guy and stuff before, and I'm like, no, I haven't.
Right.
But there's a moment like when they're in the pool hall later in the film, and he's just out of the crowd, and he's like against the wall, just kind of watching. And I'm like, this dude's eyes.
Yeah.
You can't look away, and they just kind of shift and look around, and he's such a weasel, and he seems so dangerous, and he's not physically imposing at all. And I can't believe he wasn't in more because he was really good in this.
And so the whole film opens up where, and so this is a really just kind of a ragtag band that will play wherever they can play. And they're playing in some sort of like orphanage, like all these like black kids.
Well, okay, so this was a weird choice to open, right? A group of white jazz musicians playing to a bunch of black kids.
Right, it's the first La La Land. It's fine.
and the kind of matriarch of the orphanage has no time for this. Like the look on her face is just like,
right. And one little kid steals the saxophone player, and like no one's like Darren is like laughing his ass off.
They're still playing.
They're still right. And it obviously kind of sets up that Darren. I mean, like the people that are around him if they want to be, and if they don't, Darren's never gonna like ask them to be.
Right.
And like so, I think he enjoys the company. But it doesn't mean anything to him, and that's obvious as we get to the end of the movie. They go directly from from that orphanage scene back over to a bar. What was the guy's name? Babalinsky. I fucking love the names in this movie.
Nick Bobolinas.
Bobolinas, yes.
They call him Nick the Greek, and he's like, "No, my name is Bobolinas."
He speaks in this like ridiculous Greek accent. He runs a pool hall, and all the guys go there to unwind and they eat sandwiches and drink beers, and like there's like for 6 sandwiches and 6 beers, the bill is like $2.20.
It's 1961.
Sure.
They only have $1.20.
Right, and that's where and so the whole idea is that the agent's trying to get them money, trying to get Bobby Darin, Ghost's band Bunt money, and so he gets them gigs, and Ghost is sets up gigs for them to play in the park, and like they're playing to nobody, playing to the birds.
They get union scale,
right? He's like, yeah, the groundskeeper's making more money than us right now. So the girlfriend comes in and they decide to sing with her, of course, but that all and Ghost kind of forms a relationship with her, but that all falls apart almost immediately due to a bad bad gig, essentially, right? I mean,
like they go to after they play to the orphanage, they go to this big party. That's where they meet Jess, right?
Right.
And so
where Jess is like fucked up, it's where she fucked up her parents,
right. Ghost spends the night with her, and I don't mean sexually, but like they hang out. And this is another moment where I think Cassavetes gets this right, where she comes out of the bathroom in her apartment, ready to just kind of like give herself over to Ghost because she's like, this is how this works, right? And I mean, she even sort of says something like, without my body, what am I? I'm like nothing. So I kind of, use what I have or do anything. And Ghost is like, no, that's not what I want. That's not how this works. And so then she kind of tags along with the group as they play in the park, as they play a pickup baseball game.
A weird pickup baseball game.
Just bizarre.
Right.
But then, she starts to, they end up getting a contract to record a single. And so Ghost wrote this song where Jess sings without singing, right?
Right.
And so, they're playing, and then they go out to celebrate this like recording contract, and that's when they get in this fight with these two kind of knuckleheads playing pool.
Right, they're all dancing with Jess. They're all back at Nick's.
Yeah,
right? So they're all dancing
which is because they were really nice to these guys. I mean, it was like
they basically like, we got money now. We're going to buy some wine. Everyone can drink. You guys are friends, right? You can just
come on, you can hang out with them.
And all the guys are dancing with Jess, and Jess is in this cute dress, and she's kind of and Ghost is kind of just hanging back, saying because he knows that she's with him, and like it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And then one of the guys starts to get handsy with Jess.
Well, egged on by Benny, the agent, right?
Yes, because Benny's pissed that Jess is now with Ghost, right?
And it's not even, and again, like this goes this idea of toxic masculinity. He didn't want anything from her other than just to control, just to sort of be the one who.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole story of if you want to be in my rotation, you can be in my rotation, but all I really care about is my music. I don't really care how it gets played. I'm going to play what I want to play. And then, and so Benny finds this kind of loudmouth brute, and basically the brute's like, oh, are they musicians? And like, what they bring
junkies
drugs and
dope,
right? And they
mixing with races,
right? So he does the whole like this underbelly, and then they start it's like, why is she dancing with those guys? And because they're we're friends. It's we're friends, right?
Yeah, we're friends. Yeah. And then Tommy, that's the big knucklehead's name, just starts beating on everybody, and when he gets to Ghost just kind of folds,
right?
And no one cares. Right? No one cares. He kind of gets tossed to the side and stays there. But when they help him up, when they sit him up, he kind of lashes out at everyone. Right? And that's when Jess is like, I don't need this shit. And takes off. And then that leads to a big rift with everyone.
She takes off. The saxophone player goes with her.
Yeah.
And she kind of throws herself at the saxophone player. And then basically the band breaks up. Like, I mean, they go back to, so Jess is now gone, basically. They go back to record the single.
There's a new girl.
And Benny has brought in a new girl to record. When Ghost gets there, he shows up late. He's like, no, this is not going to, we're not going to sing with this new person. And so they try to renegotiate the deal, and then it all falls apart. and Seymour Cassell, one of the band players, like gets in his face and is like, "You're ruining this for you. Like all we've ever wanted to be is a big band. Like we've been trying to get our break forever.
Yeah.
And you're fucking this up for us." And then the saxophone player is like, "Look, man, I'll go.
Right.
We're ride or die. I'll go wherever
with
want
you.
to. Like
Yeah.
you need a saxophone player, call me. I'll be there."
Yeah.
And so Benny gets Ghost a gig playing piano underneath some witch woman's tutelage in this bar, basically.
He's basically whoring himself.
Right. And he can't stand it. He's like, he tries to destroy it at every chance he has. Like the person who's bankrolling him after one of the shows, she asks him if he wants to drink, and she's like, "You want it on the rocks or
or neat?"
Neat. And he's like, neat. And then when she hands it to him, he's like, "I wanted it on the rocks." Like, and she's like, "It doesn't matter what I fucking said, right?
You're gonna say the opposite.
You would have said the opposite, right?" And then it gets a little weird for me, like when Benny brings in the new person and like how like basically he's he kind of confronts Ghost and says, "Look, you're nothing, and you're never gonna be anything." And that everyone knows you're just whoring yourself out, and you will never get a job in this town again.
Yes.
And Ghost is like, "Fine, I don't give a shit." He runs into the saxophone player again.
No, he goes back to Nick's.
He goes back to Nick's,
Yeah.
right? And basically, kind of like he has no job. He goes back to Nick's to kind of make good with Nick, right? To like, and then Nick's like, "Yeah, we're good, no worries."
Yeah.
But he runs into the saxophone player.
Well, he says, "Where are the guys?" And he tells him. He kind of reluctantly
That's
tells
true.
him
Right.
where they're playing, because he's like, "Oh, it's this terrible joint with like sawdust and bimbos and everything." And so then he goes, yeah,
and then he finds out where Jess is, and Jess is now a prostitute in this bar. He goes and kind of pulls her out of that life. Not pulls her out of that life. He goes and punches the John that she's with.
He finally punches someone. He finally sort of, in this sort of representational way, sort of steps up for her. And
she goes into the bar bathroom, breaks the mirror, and is trying to kill herself. And there, in the best shot of the movie, right? I mean, like where they're trying to get her to calm down. We have a shot through the drain. We're seeing Jess's face, and it's like it was just a really, really cool shot for a no budget movie. He takes Jess back to the band, and
the band's like, "Get out of here!"
And the band's like, "Fuck you! Don't have a place here. We're done.
Get yourself
and
lost."
He even talks to Seymour Castle's like, "Get yourself lost." And he talks to the saxophone player, and he's like, "You got to go." And then basically he's there to give Jess back to the band, and then she starts kind of doing her singing without singing, and the saxophone player comes over, accompanies the voice, and then everybody shifts back into that song. And Ghost knows that he's not going to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And lets them have it. And lets them have this song that he wrote and that they were going to write together, that they were going to record together. Yeah. And that's basically it. I know that this movie was like not what he wanted to do, but I do think this is really where you're starting to see like how good of a filmmaker he's going to be. Like, not clearly, I don't think the first two that we're going to that we tackled, they're not by far his best films at all. But this is laying the groundwork for, really cinema to come for the next fucking 30 years.
Well, and I think you see some of his hallmarks in storytelling and acting, where you get this, like how he handles sort of emotional messiness. I said this earlier, but his views on like complexities of love and sex, and kind of he has this tough but generous view of people and humanity. There's such a love for all these characters, even if he's really hard on them. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think with this film too, you mentioned like the camera placement and movement of shadows. I think you see that here as well. There is some really nice kind of dolly and gliding shots in this.
Well, and I think where he, like, from an improvisational style in this film, I think where he starts to really kind of find the joy in the little moments, like where they're ribbing Nick at the bar and giving him a hard time, or like where Nick jumps up on the pool table, not jumps, but sits up on the pool table so they can't shoot their shots anymore. There's a camaraderie amongst these men, even Darren, who probably wasn't like one of these guys, right? Like Darren would have come, he's a huge recording star at this point, and Darren tragically dies at the age of 37 as well. Like, he's not too long for this world. But I mean, he would have been a huge star, and for him to kind of fit into this role and at times really fade into the background of this movie, and like, yes, it's his story,
but it's kind of an ensemble film as well.
Really, yeah, absolutely. And for Darren not to like make this a Bobby Darin film, and like not to make it where he's crooning at some point, or where he's singing.
Yeah, he never sings.
And so I mean, I think that speaks volumes for Cassavetes and how he did it. But yeah, I mean, like there's so many moments in this, and having even the darker side of it. Like I think it's very, as much as you say that like Cassavetes is very knowing about sexuality and even race relations at this time, like kind of knowing himself too. If you put Ghost as Cassavetes, this idea of Cassavetes understanding when he can be weak and when he's not, what situations that he would fold under and still come back and have a sense of self-worth. I mean, like, yeah, he lashes out, but very quickly there's a like a weight that Darren carries throughout this film where he's just at ease with himself and at ease with his, well, not so much with himself, but with his art. And again, like you said at the beginning, with this uncompromising vision of like, look, it doesn't matter if I play seconds and the only people in the theater are the birds or the projectionist. I'm playing the movie I want to play.
Right.
Again, going back to Gerwig and Polly.
Yeah.
And not that everyone has to have 100% artistic integrity, right?
But that's what I think. That's what I love so much about this film, is that it is about this idea of artistic integrity, right? And not doing something just for fame or money, but for the kind of the love of it. It's the thing that keeps bringing this guy back to do this stuff,
right? And him hustling in Johnny Staccato, in between these two films speaks to that as well. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll be in your dumb PI, and I've never watched Johnny Staccato.
I haven't either,
but I mean, like, I'll be in your dumb TV series about a PI, and yeah, because it's an ends to a means. So if you want me to dress up and be a dancing monkey, I'm going to dress up and be a dancing monkey, because what I'm going to put out is going to be what what I truly love.
Right, and we've seen him. I mean, it's not like this guy phones anything in either. I mean, we see him in The Dirty Dozen. And he gets nominated for an Oscar, right? We've seen him in Rosemary's Baby.
Right, yeah.
Right? And even like playing the baddie in Columbo. I mean, he's good. I mean, and Mikey and Nikki. I mean, again, this is not just, he's doing stuff, yes, to make money to fund this, but he's also really going at it.
And that was, and we talked about Cassell is really good in this. I mean, like, again, he's such like a vision of a human being. I mean, I don't know, it's that wavy hair that he still has today, but it's just a little whiter, you know what I mean? I don't know. He's just got a face that is really, really compelling. It's I know that Cassavetes is not like Elaine May. Cassavetes gets his due. I mean, there are people that do retrospectives. Right. He's got a whole 5, film box set on Criterion. Most of his stuff is on Criterion. Like, out of his films, I mean, most of them are lauded. It's not like, I mean, whether or not they're really truly watched over and over again.
Right,
or in the consciousness necessarily, their impact is definitely felt.
Right.
I mean, from Jarmusch to Spike to fucking Kevin Smith. I mean, like, it's just
Sean Baker.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, like, all of these, setting the tone for what cinema will become, especially independent cinema.
It's weird. I feel like Cassavetes he's like the poet that only other poets know.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
He's the comedian's comedian, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's that guy that it's like, oh, yeah, or he was really influential, and people know the name, but they don't know like everything else.
Right.
Or they've never actually seen the films. Right. Everyone knows these certain poets are really fantastic, but no one's ever read the books, right?
Right. But it's true, though. Like, I mean, like, it's, and again, talking about like going back and revisiting filmographies. As we're on the verge of, well, we're not on the verge, we're mired in a writer's strike and an actor's strike that it seemingly has not even begun. And to what that's going to do to cinema and, for the next couple of years or whatever, there's so much content and there's so much, I don't know, we're losing. I think we're losing the thread a lot. Like, we're losing, like, with Warner, was it Warner Brothers or MGM that pulls the plug on Turner Classic Movies, and like there's so much. I don't know which one it is. I know that one of them owned it, and then like they gutted it.
It's Warner. It's Warner because it was part of HBO Max and everything.
Right.
So yeah.
So I mean, like it's as we get further and further and further away from these films, I wonder how, like, will we truly lose them at some point?
Well, businessmen have no artistic integrity,
right?
And I mean, I say that as kind of a glib comment, but it's true, right? They don't care. These guys, Zaslav and these cats, don't care about artistic integrity. They don't care about why we keep some of this stuff around.
Right.
They don't give a shit because it doesn't make them any money. It's not appeasing stockholders. Who cares if people love them and want to watch them? That doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not really, none of this is about serving a paying customer. None of this is really about the watching public.
Yeah.
It's not.
I'm glad we can end on I know it was my fault, but I'm glad we can end on a high note.
That was great. So next time, please don't make me do A Child Waits.
Oh, okay, we don't have to do A Child's Waits.
That
was taken away from him. So we can basically say that. Okay, we can cross that one through.
We'll touch on it. We will talk about it, but let's get to Faces.
Well, next time will be our trilogy of trash. We just screened, and I'm still recovering from our screening of Pink Flamingos for the Fort Worth Film Club. It actually was a wonderful screening.
It was great.
A ridiculous amount of laughter, as there should be. So next time we'll talk about John Waters' trilogy of trash, which is Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, and Desperate Living. Get ready for that. And maybe we'll talk about a contemporary film. I don't know, maybe They Clone Tyrone, if you haven't seen that yet. We'll talk about They Clone Tyrone.
That sounds great.
And if maybe I would like to talk about They Clone Tyrone in conjunction with The Blackening, if you haven't seen it yet.
I'll watch it. I will sit down and get to that one.
I think they're a good double feature. And and then we'll get back into Cassavetes. And we'll do, what's the next two? We're not going to do
Faces and Husbands.
Husbands. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Faces and Husbands.
They took it okay. I think talking about A Child Waits is an interesting topic to talk about, but I don't want to
dive right.
I don't want to.
What we'll do next time, instead of A Child Waits, we'll just talk about David Gordon Green's The Sitter. I don't know if you guys have heard of that movie, but it's really fucking good. It's so good. Jonah Hill and
it's basically the same thing.
It's basically the same movie. We're just gonna review The Exorcist. I don't even know what it's called. I don't even know what the fuck they called it.
I forget. I don't know. The Exorcist Revelation. I that's not it, but I have no idea.
No, but he's going to make a trilogy of those movies too. So now you know that
The Exorcist Believer.
Oh,
The Exorcist Believer.
Right. I think they have all three of them already mapped out. And I don't know. I mean, you got Bernstein back. I guess that's I don't. But I mean, what the fuck else is she going to do? All you got to do. I mean, like, no offense to Ellen Bernstein. I mean, she's great. But I mean, like, if you offered me $5 million, like, or whatever, it couldn't.
So are you saying you don't have artistic integrity?
Not at this point.
Okay.
No.
I think it's important to be honest with yourself.
Look, I do this. That would be my Johnny Staccato, and then I come back and do whatever the hell I want to do. Yeah.
One for them, one for you.
One for
all right.
Yeah.
Well, so that's the plan going forward. All right. If there's nothing else, thanks for listening.
Keep screaming.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,